Okay, my friends, a new course of direction today at Mud Fossil University. I am going to confront all the sciences. When I went to school and I learned what I learned, I realized it wasn't right, but there was no way to stand up for myself because you just couldn't stand up. Otherwise, they would fail you. So I went on my own way. Now, at this point in my life, I don't care anymore. People can laugh at me all they want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to confront every aspect of science because it's completely wrong. Everything that you were taught was wrong. These are mud fossils that prove a lot. Let's talk about what changes we need to make in education. Here they are right here. Everything. What did the mud fossils change? Well, these are body parts. These are literally body parts. It changes literally everything in geology. As far as I can determine, there is no things that were not biological. If that's correct, that changes 100%. Also, without doubt, 100% of anthropology and archaeology and all of that stuff is completely nonsense now. The aging of the earth and all that stuff is very silly because they have every layer being laid down 1,000,000 years, another million, another million. All it happened in 15 seconds when the guy died because there are giants all over the earth. History is obviously 100% wrong. Beliefs, I don't know what people believed before and what they'll believe after seeing this stuff, but it's in flux. This thing means changes. When you see this triangle, it means changes. Now, light and atomic change is what changed there. Everything. Everything. Because, well, everything's subatomic. As you get up into the realms of molecules, they seem to work pretty well. However, chemistry is literally 100% wrong now. In the subatomic range. When you take and you make water, H2O, it's no longer just H1 big gigantic proton and then a couple of oxygens. No, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of these little particles together that make up everything. There is no such thing as one gigantic proton and you can smash it into little bits. The little bits you smash it into are the little bits it's made of, and they are electrons. So that changes everything in physics, in chemistry, everything. It also changes a lot in the health realm because now, well, everybody knows this, bacteria is magnetic, but they also have to understand that the enzymes that are made by bacteria that live in your gut, biology and health, are the things that, the enzymes made by the bacteria are the things that make you healthy. All of these things, I mean, literally everything you have been taught is wrong. When they say your gut disorder is caused by some disease that you have, no, it's exactly the opposite. The gut disorder caused that disease, and it caused it by not having the bacteria to respond to that disease to create enzymes. I am going to go through everything, and we're going to start right at the beginning. This is going to be changes in education. Now, and again, I did this many, many, many years ago. I started, and I learned that this is just the way I am. I can't help myself. I want to know. If somebody says something, I want to see, is that correct or is it not correct? Can I bring any valid information, experimental, material evidence to support my side? Not just, you're an idiot, how could any idiot believe this, the guy's crazy, you got to be nuts, his head's falling off. You do that stuff, you're gone. You come to me with valid arguments, and I will talk all day long. But when you come to me saying you're just an idiot, you are historical data, my friend. Okay, so the best place for me to do some discussion is Veritasium. He confronts back and forth. He says, here's what I'm saying, here's how this works, and he makes a lot of statements, and I'm going to go through one today about the focus point of light, because that's my area. I do all these areas are my areas at this point, because nobody understands anything anymore. They all want to go with the mainstream, and he's going with, the mainstream, basically the Bohr model, which isn't going to work, and that's why he's making some of the assumptions he's making, and on a lot of other things as well. He did one on electricity the other day, and I tried to get in and confront that, and for some reason I'm not being heard, but hopefully that will change. Now, let's look at what Derek has to say about light, which is, again, something that I realize light is not what they say it is. It's dipoles, and literally everything is dipoles. So let's just start there. And because if you don't understand the nature of the particles that everything exists of, nothing will ever make sense. Not a thing will make sense. Okay, my friends, you're going to find this hard to believe, but nobody understands quantum physics, and they still don't have any idea about it. This is what they wanted to use a Large Hadron Collider for, is a photon collider, but they couldn't figure out how to do it. All the way back to 1978, they had a special commission on trying to use photons, and that's what we use, because we use light. And we can actually see the Feynman diagram actually happen and spit off these W bosons, which are the heavy particles, and the light particles, the black and white particles we showed. Now, watch this. Okay, I've taken all kinds of courses online. I went to Yale and took all their quantum, and it's really literally nonsense, and they know it, and they admit it. Listen to this. This is Yale, and they're starting quantum physics, and he's going to tell them how he feels about quantum. Here it goes.
So this is a very exciting day for me, because today we're going to start quantum mechanics, and that's all we'll do till the end of the term. Now, I got bad news and good news. The bad news is that it's a subject that's kind of hard to follow intuitively, and the good news is that nobody can follow it intuitively. Richard Feynman, one of the big figures in physics, used to say no one understands quantum mechanics. So, in some sense, the pressure is off for you guys, because I don't get it, and you don't get it, and Feynman doesn't get it. The point is, here's my goal. Right now, I am the only one who doesn't understand quantum mechanics. In about 7 days, all of you will be unable to understand quantum mechanics. Then you can go back and spread your ignorance everywhere else. That's the only legacy a teacher can want. So,
well, that's true. Well, I can tell you what. Right now, I am the only one that understands quantum mechanics and the Feynman diagrams. And in 7 days, you will all be able to understand quantum mechanics. Actually, in about 7 minutes. It's very, very simple when you understand dipole flood theory, which is what you will very soon understand, which completely replaces the Bohr theory with just that right there. That's it. That's the entire dipole electron flood theory. All that exists are electrons, which we always thought was just one glowy little sparky little bugger that just ran through and made electricity and lightning and static. No, it has a dark side. That's what we never saw. That's what makes everything work. So no more is it not understood. It's just not allowed to be understood. Okay, as you probably maybe already know, CERN just turned back on again, and they have found all the particles that I'm about to show you. Now, this goes back a ways, and they were talking about the Feynman diagram. The Feynman, where the guy from Yale there said nobody understands it. Well, I understand it very well. And this is the case for studying photon collisions, and they still refuse to do this. They couldn't do it back in '78. They said the physics of photon collision has been a topic of some interest for many decades, and this is back in 1978. Indeed, a special meeting in 1978 discussed the prospects of such collisions at the LHC's predecessor, the LEP, which collided electrons with positrons up until 2000. They say the collisions are very clean as we're colliding only photons, which is what we did, only photons, which are elementary particles, not composite ones like protons. That is the key. Alright, so most of you know that I am literally into everything. And every science, the history, mythology, everything. And I am pretty well accomplished at understanding the physical nature of everything, and I demonstrate it with material science, not just guesses. I know it's spectacular, it's crazy, it's insane. All of those things, true. But don't call me crazy and insane unless you can do it with material evidence that overrides my material evidence. All right? I'm through with just being insulted. If you can come up and confront my material evidence with some other material evidence, that's totally different than coming up and saying, well, there's a photon equation that says this is crazy, you're an idiot. No. I show the stuff and I present the evidence. Everything here is presented with physical evidence, historical documentation, chemistry, and it's very, very spectacular. That doesn't mean it's nonsense. So, as I said, I am a material guy, and this guy here is a material guy. This is Derek Mueller, and he runs Veritasium, which is a fabulous channel on YouTube, and he's got it on Facebook, and he posts all the time. He says, why gravity is not a force? Well, I have disputes with what Derek talks about because he's using the standard model. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So to use the standard model to verify all the things he says is not going to work. So Derek and I are going to go back and forth a little bit, I hope. I'm definitely going to critique the things he says because, you know, he's making a lot of great assumptions. I have nothing to say bad about Derek whatsoever. I just have a different interpretation based on electron flood theory, which is, I can virtually prove it. And CERN has as well. They just did. After refitting the Large Hadron Collider, they're seeing the exact same particles I showed and the exact same decay, only we can focus them. They're just hitting them head on and getting garbage. So let's get started. Okay, so here's Derek Mueller, and he's going to be talking about diffraction and shadows and how a bright spot can show up in the center of a shadow. Now listen to this.
In shadows, and in fact it was the cause of a massive debate about 200 years ago. In 1818, the French Academy sponsored a competition to try to find the best explanation of diffraction, and Augustin Fresnel entered this competition with the suggestion that light is a wave phenomenon, and just like any ordinary wave, it bends as it passes around an obstacle. But one of the judges was Simeon Poisson, a harsh critic of the wave theory. He much preferred Newton's idea that light was a stream of particles, and to show just how ridiculous...
All right, let's just talk about particle-wave duality, because that's true, it is. But the particle sets up a magnetic field which creates the wave as it passes through all the other magnetic particles that are in the air. That's which creates a wave, but the particle creates the field. So it's particle-wave duality. I show these in extreme detail.
Ridiculous the wave theory was, he showed that Fresnel's theory would predict a bright spot in the shadow, right in the middle of the shadow behind a circular object. That there would be a spot almost as bright as if the object wasn't there at all. And he thought this was absurd. But my question is, does it exist? Is the brightest part of a shadow really in the middle? To find out, we're going to have to do the experiment. So here, I was using the laser through a diverging lens, and then that beam was shone onto a marble resting on top of a loop of tape. So you can see on the wall, basically exactly what you'd expect, just a shadow of the marble. But when you turn the lights off, there it is. A bright spot right in the middle of that...
All right, you're going to have a hard time seeing it. It is there. There is a bright spot. It's not brighter than anything else. It's not as bright as everything else out there. But there is a spot, and I can tell you exactly why it occurs.
Shadow.
You see, you can just barely see it.
The brightest part...
It's not the brightest part. This is the brightest part. And you see how there's almost like a film around that marble. That marble is about this big. We're hitting here, and it's rolling around the marble, yes. And when it comes out the other side, it's going to slam this side and that side into each other. And anytime you have push to shove, you have glow. And that's what you get here, is because it comes over, it comes over, it comes around, it comes around, it comes around, it comes around. And that is where you get the glow, right where they hit on the other side. Okay, my friends, this is from 7 years ago. We saw these particles, and I literally showed these particles to CERN and Fermilab, and I went to University of Geneva online on Coursera, and I showed them these particles, and they acknowledged them, and they said, "Ooh, this is interesting." Now, then they refitted their particle smasher to hit head on, and they finally found these particles. Now, they found the exact same particles I showed them. However, these are just going splashing off to space because they're hitting head on. We created a funnel to focus them right through and can see them in really magnificent shape. Now, what did we start with? We started with photons. Photons are light. Well, when it goes through the Venturi, they break into the electron state. An electron is that. They call it a gluon. It's not a gluon, it is an electron. It does have two things glued together, yes. It has the dark matter, which is their black ball right here, which they're going to call, I don't know what they call it, the dead cone. They call this a dead cone, the dead cone effect. This doesn't have any cone. The white one makes a splash. It splashes all over and makes these little splashy things, the white showers, and then you end up with the black ball. And that's what happens here. These two are that. When they smash into another medium, they should separate. And eventually they start a shower. And the white ones just shed off all over the place, and the black one just continues on its way. I'll show you that. This is exactly what CERN shows. Exactly. These two particles are what they call a gluon, and that would be a gluon as well. Well, they're normally stuck together in a 4-box like this as a photon. However, when that photon gets smashed, these come apart. So you get one of these, what they call a gluon, which I call an electron, and another electron. They go flying. Now, if you hit them hard enough, these two will actually come apart, and we did that. And here's when they came apart. It was in the Venturi right here. They came in, smashed here. You see the black ball staying black, just goes around, and the white turns into a shower. Precisely what I just showed you from CERN. And they call this the dead cone. The black one is a dead cone. The dead cone is the muon. They always used to call it the muon. Neutrino just stayed as turned into what they call a sterile muon all by itself. Normally it was attached to the electron neutrino. Muon, electron, neutrino. Muon, electron, neutrino. Muon, electron, neutrino. Back to back, which I call two. This is an electron, that's an electron. Between the two of them, they make a photon. A photon bounces off of you because it's pretty much complete. It has two sides to it. If you just had one of those electrons, it would burn into you. And the more of them you have, the more burn it gets. And if you have enough of them hitting you at the same time, you literally explode. Normally, you're just going to get a little bit warmed up. Now, this is fission. We saw the two particles together. There they are right there. And here they are coming into the Venturi. And this is where the fission occurs, and this is where the fusion occurs after they come back together. This is astronomical amount of energy. We should be able to get free energy driving our cars today for free. Literally for free. The most cheapest thing you can buy is these lasers and these things. I mean, they're just a dime a dozen. And that's all you need is a laser and a photoreceiver. When the photoreceiver is going to pick up this brilliant energy right here before it fuses back. In the middle between the fission and the fusion is just astronomical amounts of energy. And that's what we need right now. And we can get it. And this is Fermilab. 13 years ago, Don Lincoln posted this. He said, well, there's a black particle and a white point particle. Fixed, it never changes. This one here is squishy and has no value other than burning. I agree 100%. That's the one, never changes. And that's why it can't get through that slit. It's too big. And it can't squish. These can squish. And they're just point particles. So now it's time to understand the reality of the world that we live in. Before you can get to electron flood theory, you're just totally lost. Bohr model says there's one big gigantic like this in the center, all positive, and a couple little floaters around outside that are negative, that are almost virtually not even there. They say they just don't even bother to weigh them hardly. They're so small. But really what's made up is those small particles in a mass. And at a certain number, which I believe it's 1839, at that point they lock in. It might be 1837 or 1835. It's right in that area, but it's an odd number because that makes it an ion, which means it has a polarity. It has a dipole polarity. It wants to add one more electron to make it up to 1840 would become a neutron. And that's exactly what it is. One extra weight of one electron, which weighs 0.0005485 atomic mass units. You add one of those to a proton, and it weighs exactly what a neutron weighs. So it's obviously just added one more electron. And then you get into isotopes and all those things, and then they just subtract electrons or add electrons. They're either, isotopes just means they're not a standard model. They decay or they take on more particles to become stable at an exact certain number of particles. That's called radioactivity. Isotopes are not a full-size particle, a stable particle. So that's what an isotope is. And so there you know that it's not just one big gigantic thing. You can't have one big gigantic thing and then have a couple of little extra things here and there, or not a couple extra things. It starts like this, and then you can take a few out and add a few extra, yes. And they will eventually work their way out or work their way in to become stable at an exact, very stable frequency. They shake, boop, and then they lock in. Well, if they're shaking and they got one extra, it's shaking, so finally it's going to go. And then you'll get down to your stable core. Okay, so stick around Mud Fossil University if you want to learn reality about everything. Everything has changed. Everything in education has changed. Mud Fossil changes geology, anthropology, history. It could have a lot to do with beliefs. These are rocks that originally were creatures, and that's the feather pattern in this goose's head. And there's his little beak. And this is some new species. It's called no-toes. We have a ton of these in all kinds of different variations of decay, and that's where the tibia would have sat right there, and the fibia comes down on the side and falls off. So we know that geology is absolute nonsense now. I mean, and the geologists are fighting tooth and nail to stop me from being heard. And everything, history, they're all very, very upset because they have been not responsive, which makes them look foolish. If they had been responsive and said, well, let's take a look at this, we would be in a whole new place, which we're going to get to. You can't be denied now. So we're going to get there, but the people that have been extractionists now are going to look like fools, and they are, because they have been just tooth and nail. You just can't even imagine the venom that comes out of these people that are geologists. I'm not kidding you. It's absolutely incredible. Now, we know that the light and all that business, that's just complete nonsense, because you're basing everything on the fact that there's a big proton and there's just little tiny electrons. They have no explanation for light or anything right now, and they don't realize that light is these particles coming through space, which saturates space with actual particles that have to be bumped into. They are magnetic little regions, got to be bumped and pushed to the side. That slows down light. The Hubble Space Telescope is not working at all, basically, other than seeing some nice pictures. We can't tell where anything is because we have no idea how dense space is in front of us, that way or this way. No idea whatsoever. So they think everything's moving away, everything's just slowing down. That's why the phase, instead of being, coming at us, is sort of slowing down as it bangs in, and then we see it in the red shift, which is the long waves. If it's real, and bang, 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 and I can show it slowing down. You want to see it slowing down? I can prove that too. You see this? This is blue. Blue comes in hot. I mean, it comes in sizzling. You see it down here? That's right after the Venturi. And you see it coming here? It's going, and all of a sudden, slowing down. You see it? And the reason it's drifting to the left is it's spinning to the right. This is all one particle. We're picking it up in one shot. That's slowing down. Coming in hot, slowing down. Light slows down, light speeds up. I showed light speed up 1,000,000 times. You saw it. Can't miss it. There it is right there. That's sped up. And this is the division of the particles. The black ones, you see them? They're the same size over here as they were over here. Not a single one comes through the Venturi. It's zero, nada, nothing. And then they come back together here, and this is where the Higgs fields propagate themselves. As they start, see them smashing into, grabbing a hold of the black particles, this is where the Higgs fields start showing up. You want to see the Higgs fields? Here we go. We got Higgs on the move. There they are. This is coming out of the Venturi, which is that white range. Remember where it was all white, white, white? Well, there it is right there, and then all of a sudden the particles start slamming into these particles and turning into these little showers of what they call Higgs fields. All right, so we have all the evidence to show what they want to see. This is the green and red at the same time. Let's see. You see how the difference in power? There's the red, very little power, and there's the green, powerful as hell. Going through the same Venturi at the same time, actually forcing the green to barrel roll. They don't do that. They're supposed to spin in circles like this. Well, this one's spinning around and around and around and around. Otherwise, they're supposed to be going, like I said, like this. And I can show that. You want to see that? Yeah, sure. Why not? This is how light spins. Light is a spinning particle. It's a magnetic particle at the tip of a spinning vortex. Sometimes spins this way and it goes off to that side. Sometimes it comes under the slit and goes off to this side. In the middle, they hate each other and they push, push, push. This is repulsion patterns. They're not anything. This is a single slit. This has nothing to do with overlapping waves. This has to do with a particle going that way and a particle going this way. And as they get out further, they get less and less banged. That's all. And in the middle, they get banging like hell. You see how much more powerful the green is? It's so powerful. It's racing past the red and making them turn into little rollers. You see? Even the green is mixing with the red. That's kind of unusual. And then the green reconcusses way out here because it's just so much more powerful than the red. And then the blue is way more powerful than the green. Okay, so we've seen geology and all kinds of things are not correct. And light is not correct either. And the particles that exist in space and everywhere else, they don't recognize any of this stuff. Now, this is light coming through just the air. Red pulse laser is light. That's all it is light. Now, what are these little dots all over? Those are particles that are in the air that also have magnetism. Anytime you push a magnet against another magnet, they oppose each other. When they have opposing fields, you can, anytime you have energy, you have glow. This one's a little, this one's, get the hell out of the way. These glow a little bit because they're the shovers. This is the pusher. The pusher, get out of the way, and these try to shove back, but they're forced to get out of the way. But at the same time, they get illuminated. Now, Derek made the claim that a light is right behind a round object. I agree with that, and I understand why. It's because the fields come around the light and snap back together on the other side. And they come in from every angle, all around it. Not just from this side or that side or the top or here. They come right around the whole thing, and in the back is where they slap. And that's where you see that light. Okay, so I hope I made my case today for why there's a little bright spot behind a round object. Because the fields come around and then they snap back out into their openness, and when they do, there's a concussion zone in the center, and you get a little tiny glow. Now, my next one I'm going to do with Derek here is why gravity is not a force. I from just looking at it, I'm going to say, no, Derek, you're wrong. It is, well, I'm going to have to say it's absolutely a force. I don't know how he came up with this, but we're going to investigate it. Now, I'll put a link to this one about the shadow, so you can come up and watch the whole thing. It's only 3.5 minutes long. But I think I've explained precisely. And in order to understand this, we've got to start from the beginning again. And that's where we need discussion. That's what I'm asking Derek to do. Derek, Mr. Mueller, Sir, Your Honor, Your Magnificence, we need to discuss something. That's all. I just want to be part of the discussion. Until we understand the nature of the subatomic realm, which they're starting to understand it a little bit, but not like I do. I understand it intimately. They're just seeing particles. Now they say, whoop, yep, Roger was right, those particles exist. Now they're going to try to say, oh, yep, we figured this all out. They already just did say they figured it out now. Well, I've been giving them that information for 7 years. 7 years they've denied me everything. They talked to me in the beginning, every one of them. And as soon as they realized I was right, they went on their way and finally came up and said, yeah, guess what? We finally proved it. Well, I think I proved it 7 years ago. And I proved it in mud fossils 10, 12 years ago. So everything is just like Max Planck said, science advances one funeral at a time. All these people that are in charge, before they're out of charge, they stop breathing oxygen. That's the only way it works. Once you're there for eternity.